welcome to Bleach Revisited. I am Carker Gold, your host of this series in which we will be reading every single chapter of the Bleach manga, providing critical analysis of the art and the narrative, as well as personal response to each of these chapters. We'll also be discussing how the chapter connects to the rest of the manga as a whole. As usual, we begin these videos with a reading of the chapter that we are currently discussing for the episode. This is Chapter 102, Nobody Wins. Chad? No, it's Sato. You're huge. Is that my school's uniform? I've never seen you before. I transferred in today, Class 2F. You're my age? That's my class. What the heck? Oh well. Thanks for helping me out. Hey, are you sure you should stand up? Yeah, no problem. Are you sure? They got you pretty good. You're bleeding. I know. But if they hadn't used rocks, I would have won. Aren't these guys 9th graders? Did you provoke them? Not really. All I did was have funky hair. They hate anyone who stands out. That's all. Must be the same for you, huh? Huh? Never mind. I just mean that you stand out too. Come on, let's get going, Chad. It's Sato. You're staggering. Don't you like the name Chad? It's cool, like Dominic Chad. Never heard of him. Who is he? You don't know? What about Chad Smith? Don't know him either. But I know who Eugene Chadbourne is. Who? It was a dream. A dream about the past. Like an old man's dream. Find him? No! Alright. This warehouse is next. Second squad, go around to the back. Good thing I woke up early. If this banging had woke me up, I'd have had a bad day. Bleach, Chapter 102, Nobody Wins. This is Toshiro Hitsugaya. What the heck is it? This is a special nutritional fortification pill supplied to every one of the fourth companies so that we can work like horses even when we're tired. Really? But it's got a skull on it. I think you're being deceived. One pill and boom. Alright, shall we? Whoa. What's wrong? What do you mean? It didn't work, did it? What? Don't I have an I feel great look about me? You look worse than you did before. Is this some kind of joke? Alright. There's nobody there. It seems strange that there's not a single guard here after our battle yesterday. They probably didn't think the enemy would come back so soon, I guess. Hey, I wonder if the others are alright. The guy with the white cape and glasses and the cutie pie with the chestnut hair. Cutie pie? Ugh, nobody says that nowadays, dude. Uryu and Orihime. Both Uryu and Orihime are 100 times smarter than me. They'd never pick a fight with an enemy that they don't stand a chance against. I'm sure. They're alright. What about the other guy? Chad or whatever? Well, there's even less reason to worry about him. Why? We don't even know if he's still alive. He's alive. I feel it. I felt his spiritual pressure ever since we got here. Anyway, I can't even imagine Chad losing. Ah! You monster! Where's the Senzaiku? Senzaiku? I asked the other guy where Rukia Kuchiki was, and he said that word before he passed out. Now tell me where it is. That way! It's that way! There! The White Tower over there! That's the Senzaiku! I see. Thanks. You're welcome. Never turn your back on an enemy. Die! Sorry. Don't kill me. Don't Do that again. Okay. Um, um, no, I won't. You're not gonna kill me? For reals? He's coming. A Ryoka. What? Aw, here already? Oh well. Guess we better get going. Shunsui Kyoraku, Captain, 8th Company. Are you sure you want to go? I can handle one Ryoka. Nano Issei, Assistant Captain, 8th Company. Oh, I have to. Old man Yama's orders. I don't want him to think we can't handle it. I wouldn't want anyone's reputation to get ruined. And if my Nano went out to battle and became damaged goods, I don't know what I'd do. Who's your Nano? You're in an especially lovely mood today. That's what I love about you. Enough! Just go. Okay, okay. Don't look so worried. It'll be over soon. It's just fun and games. Oh, darn it! How much longer do these steps go on? Don't they ever end? Hold your water. We're almost to the top. Yes, we're here. There's nobody around. The security's too lax here, too. Alright, we're going all the way. What? What the? The spiritual pressure's insane. What's causing it? Special Hanataro version of the nutritional fortification pill. Hanataro thinks it's standard issue for the 4th Company, but what he's holding is something his superiors created as a prank. It's different from the medicine of the other members of his company. Its active ingredient is flour. They're putting a little prank on the Hanataro there. It's not good, not especially good prank to play on him. But that is it for chapter 102 of Nobody Wins. Which, auspicious title, all things considered. But let's get to it. Let's talk about this chapter 102 and what's going on here. So, if you remember from the previous chapters, this is a bit of a leap away from what we were dealing with. So, Aizen's still assumably pinned to the wall, hanging up. Nobody's taken him down yet. People are getting arrested. It's a whole fiasco. But meanwhile, we get this flashback, and you can tell it's a flashback again because the black outlining Kubo's very consistent now with this style, which is it's nice. It's nice to kind of have that visual kind of consistency, but the black panel backgrounds indicate this is a flashback, though you could tell from context soon enough anyway, right? So this is actually the first time that Chad and Ichigo meet, right? Ichigo reads Chad's name tag, Sado, and tries to sort of figure out what the English equivalent of that would be, right? So in Japanese, you have these consonant and vowel pairs, right? So a name like Chad would be transliterated as Chado, Sado, Chad, right? Chado, right? Sado. So yeah, it's usually O's get put at the end of names that don't normally have any other pair. So because Chad, is Cha, technically, I mean, it's Chad, it's monosyllabic, but you would separate it that way. So this is Ichigo actually trying to kind of parse out what Chad's actual name should be. Not knowing, of course, that I believe that Chad's whole thing is that he is actually of mixed descent, right? So he would have been named Sado anyway, and Chad is actually his nickname, which is kind of interesting. So his actual name is like Sado, but he gets nicknamed Chad here by Ichigo, which is interesting. This is like kind of the origin of Chad's nickname. It's a neat thing. And I like that we get the cutoff for both of our characters, where we don't see the top of Chad's face, we just see his name tag. And we don't see the rest of Ichigo, we just see his shoes. In fact, we don't see all of Ichigo to the next page, and I think that's pretty cleverly done. I like that we get this perspective from Ichigo, where he's laying down and he's just seeing the buildings. I like that he's freaking out because he hasn't recognized Chad, which this is kind of funny and a callback to a little bit of something where, you know, Ichigo also didn't realize that Uryu was in his class, right? I'm pretty sure. Like, kind of doesn't pay a lot of attention to other people in general. He's not incredibly perceptive in that regard, from everything that we gathered. Um, so, this is just Ichigo kind of expressing surprise that, like, this big dude that he didn't expect is actually in his class. But of course, it turns in, like, this is the first day that Chad has here. He's helping Ichigo out because he doesn't really know anything about Ichigo. He just sees this guy bleeding, knocked out. He's like, hey, let me make sure he's fine. Because Chad's a good dude. And of course, we get this younger Ichigo. He pops up. He's looking punkish. He's kind of dusting himself off, and I like how the younger Chad kind of looks surprised here. And we get this initial bond, right? That Ichigo's like, look, all I did was like look weird. I stand out, and Ichigo's like, hey, well, you get a lot of shit because you stand out too, right? Like, I like that he immediately makes this connection with Chad. And Chad doesn't like really pick up on that, but Ichigo reiterates it and then immediately kind of accepts Chad as one of his own almost. Like, hey, let's get going, And I do like this little initial conversation that they have as they walk out of this alleyway. And Ichigo doesn't even address how much he's hurt, which is a common thing for Ichigo anyway. But they have this conversation that's kind of funny about like, like this Chad or this Chad, and he's like, oh well, I know that Chad, and he's like, who? It's cute, but ultimately, I love Chad sort of waking up, looking a bit older here, notably, as he's got the longer hair and everything. But he wakes up and he I like the moment where he's like, I dream about the past, like an old man. But he's just like sleeping in a warehouse, catching himself a nap. Um, and as they being knocked down the warehouse, he's like, well, I'm glad that I woke up before this because otherwise I'd have a bad day. We get Toshiro on the cover. Now, it might seem a little strange that Toshiro's on the cover of this one. This is our chapter covers. Whoop, I accidentally went forward one. The chapter cover for this is Toshiro, seeing as he doesn't show up at all in this chapter. Note about he wins being, like maybe Toshiro doesn't win at all. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, we'll talk about maybe what nobody wins refers to as we get further throughout the chapter. Nevertheless, we do have Toshiro here, looking cool, looking like, hey, come get some, which is it's neat. The reason why Toshiro is here is that I think these first couple of chapters that we're starting to get, volume 100 and forward, is Kubo just trying to do full art chapter covers for each of the Shinigami characters. So we got one for Sosuke Aizen, I believe, previously, and I'm trying to remember who was in the 101. It's not coming to me. 100 was Aizen. I'm almost positive. Nevertheless, yeah, this is how terrible my memory is. I can't even remember who was in the chapter that I literally just read. Oof. Yeah, rough times. Rough times for me. I hope I can remember what was on the next page. I do like that the fortification pill gets brought up. This is actually a very good item in the Bleach Brave Souls game. It boosts notably it'll boost your spiritual pressure in that game as well as your focus, but it comes at the cost of your stamina, your health, which I think is pretty fitting here because they're pretty sure that this is going to be poisonous to him. And I do like this joke that he's got this little like pill to keep him working, and of course, yeah, the fourth company, everybody in the fourth company just gets like drugs so that they can keep working like horses. It's like, man, they get treated kind of terribly. But yeah, I do enjoy this gag when he takes this pill and it's purely like, like, okay, well, let's go. He doesn't have any clear, distinct difference. And as we come to learn, it's very likely that it's just a placebo effect that he's having. That is, as a joke, his pill was swapped out, which is why Hanataro probably looks like he's about to die at all times. Get rings under his eyes, his half-lidded sort of look, right? I love Ichigo and Ganju as like comedic duo because they're both kind of, head empty, strong muscle mans. Works for me. Of course, I love Ichigo also bringing up cutie pie as something nobody says, because you have to remember that, like, Soul Society, they don't go through the same sort of culture that we do, right? Their culture is weird and detached and from people dying and showing up, but like they got people that live for quite a long time. And I don't know if we have really confirmation for Ganju's age. Like I well believe that he's probably older than Ichigo and the rest of the crew. So it makes sense that Ganju might have some sort of antiquated sort of vernacular, and I love that that comes up here. But yeah, Uryu and Orihime. I love that Ichigo gets serious here. He's like, look, yeah, they're both way smarter than me, so they would never pick a fight against someone who is stronger against them. Like they wouldn't just try to brute force it. Um, and Chad gets brought up, of course, and it's interesting that like Ichigo cutting off Ganju cover the speech bubble covers his mouth, like really literally cuts him off. We also see a little bit more working with the speech bubbles in dynamic ways here as it becomes the outline of this panel. As it leads us into the cool thing Ichigo is going to say about Chad. I feel like maybe a little bit of overuse of this background, this stippled pattern. I think Kubo really likes it, but man, does it look bad on like the ones that are close to it. It looks better as it is further back. But yeah, I could see why you might not want to do that sort of thing by hand, but sure does look like a digital effect up front in these closer ones. Like an add-in effect. I don't know. I assume that he has assistants by this point, and that's just an assistant to that fill. But someone should, you know, someone should be shaking wagging a finger there. But yes, we get this very insistent sort of moment where Ichigo. I like that he's facing left and Chad's facing right. So Ichigo is essentially again we're reading right to left, right. We have Chad. He's got to face back towards us as he's in the middle of enemies. But I like this kind of back and forth here. But this is kind of a big line a lot of people will come back to, right? The Ichigo, like I can't even imagine Chad losing. I think it's significant here because it really speaks towards like the relationship that they have, right? That Ichigo understands Chad as someone who has never lost a fight, pretty much, right? That he can't even imagine Chad losing a fight, which in shonen terms probably dooms him, right? Because it's like, well, if you set the bar that high, there's only one way you can go, bud. So we already have pretty high expectations of Chad, which have been reinforced. But yeah, we'll see just how strong our opponents are, and if perhaps Captain Shunsui might be the one to take Chad down a few pegs. We will see. But nevertheless, Ichigo, like I think affirms what we were all feeling, that Chad is really capable and competent. And Chad kind of knew that in his own way, which is why he threw Orihime and Uryu to each other, right? That he made sure that they were paired up, because Chad really feels like he can kind of handle it on his own. But I mean, like, I think ultimately, Chad doesn't need to be doing this on his own. He's a part of the group. Like, he's not as much of a loner as he could be. So yeah, there's that kind of like sense of like dealing with it on your own, being strong enough to kind of handle oneself. But like the isolation that might breed whenever you try to sort of take on that struggle by yourself. Certainly, Ruki is in that position, right, where she's trying to take on the kind of responsibility for her crimes, and deal with the brunt of it all on her own, rather than like rebelling against this unjust society, or even exposing this conspiracy against her, right? So yeah, there's that. But yeah, I like this. I like this shot of Ichigo, especially just like this very kind of serious moment from him. I do appreciate the kind of quick sketch lines for his shading, as well as kind of how it's lighter on the back of his Shihakusho there. And then the same kind of comes to Chad here. I think he's well kind of rendered in this moment. And we get this guy being flung through the air as Chad is just absolutely working his way through all these grunt soul reapers. Yeah, and of course, It's just like the Chad, like, well, bowing, thank you. This guy goes to slice him, he just stops his, not even in panel, just the hand up from off a panel. And this is the kind of ferocity of his Ryatsu, which is really good stuff. Um, yeah, Chad's a powerful character. We get that established a lot in this. And here, Nano is watching Chad come to this area, and Shunsui, who has just been taking a nap, drinking, having himself some pork buns or something, he's like, oh man, he's already here. Like, well, shit. And this is really the first that we get a little bit of a Shunsui as a character, and so it's neat. I kind of want to take a moment to talk about him. Obviously, he's dressed up much differently from the other Shinigami, especially the other captains that we've seen. Um, well, the distinctions between some Shinigami are pretty small. Like, we'll notice some characters have their dress a little bit different or whatever. Like Shunsui has like the robes all the way open to the navel. He's got like the big, flowing kind of really really ostentatious like patterned kimono over his captain's robes. I like that he's got this little anklet. He's not even wearing his shoes. He's just got his feet out, kicking back. He's drinking. He's having a good time. He's got a little hat, a little flower on it. Out here, and what is this? This is the 8th division, right? The 8th company. And so yeah, as he sits up, he's like, oh well, I guess I gotta do my job. So we get the sensation that Shunsui is very much this kind of laid back kind of fellow, right? Which is always, those are that's the one thing you gotta worry about, right? It's the people that take themselves seriously that are always those that have a little bit of a shortcoming. Whereas it's the characters that are more laid back, or even the joke characters that you really have to worry about, right? Certainly, you think about Kisuke Urahara, right, where Kisuke is all smiles and games and having a good time until he has to get serious, right? It's being able to have that I've now gotten serious hill turn that really lends itself to strength in a lot of these series, and we get that sensation already. I think one big thing that's easy to kind of overlook here is that Shunsui actually has 2 swords. And this is, I like that is, drawn a little bit of attention to here in this panel. We don't really see it here at all. We don't see his Zanpakuto, but here he's, like, okay, well, I like how she's like, are you sure you gotta go? He's like, well, I got to, old man Yama. And so the fact that he refers to Yamamoto as old man Yama, and yeah, I gotta have my reputation and all that. And he's kind of trying to take it seriously. I think it's kind of cute that he gets juxtaposed to, of course, the well put together Nano Issei, who seems very serious, very secretarial. She's taking her job seriously, and it is very much like this kind of laid back boss and very kind of serious assistant or secretary vibe between them. Of course, complete with inappropriate sort of approach as he insists, like, oh, well, I wouldn't want you to become damaged goods, oh, you're so lovely, maybe inappropriate sort of situation between the two of them, given we don't know exactly their relationship, and if it's purely business, or, I don't know, even if you can have something relatively romantic, I think he's just being kind of a gross old man, really. That he dotes on her in that way, right? He's like, oh, my lovely, lovely Nano. Anyway, I do like that, of course, we do get that moment, right, where he looks back and he's got a much more serious sort of expression here as he expresses that it's just fun and games, right? That this isn't something he's taking seriously, that despite how strong these Ryoka seem to be, for Shunsui, it's not that big of a concern. Now, I don't know if Shunsui's heard about his compatriot Sosuke Aizen, who has just been murdered, but at the very least, it seems like Shunsui's taking things pretty easily, not too seriously. And so it seems like this is his kind of natural state, is to really kind of hang back, lay back, and then maybe he's so powerful that he doesn't really have to give things too much consideration. Again, the only really action that we've seen from captains so far is we know that Kisuke used to be a captain, and he's fittingly strong, and we know that Ichimaru again is a captain, and he essentially knocked our characters out of the Soul Society the second that they came in, and cut off Chidambo's arm. But otherwise, we haven't really seen any of the captains, or really what the upper level of strength is here in Soul Society. We just have heard rumor of it and have had it really put on pedestal. So I'm glad to hear that Shunsui is displayed as pretty cool, but also as this kind of guy that's like, yeah, this isn't that big of a deal. They have raised the alarm and made a big deal out of it, and they're talking about like all the damages that they've had taken. But if a captain mobilizes, it seems like, well, these are the really truly the once in a generation powerhouses, right? And we cut back to Ichigo and Co. They're running up the stairs to the Zenzaikyu. It's a lot of stairs. You know, I like that they get to the very top. They're like, oh, right, well, like nobody's around. What's the deal? And then immediately they feel the spiritual pressure overwhelm them, right? I love the shot, like where they all just kind of are isolated, and it's the whole page. I think it's a great one. And Ichigo immediately is filling in all of them. I love the effect that's given here, right? Um, I think this does a great job. They try to emulate this in the anime, but I always felt like it worked better in the manga. The idea of this incredible pressure kind of bearing down upon them. Um, yeah, I love like Ganju, like his whole eye blotted out here. I think Kubo was just having a rough day with the inks. You could really see Hanatara's having a rough go of it. But in general, everybody just kind of being put under this pressure, and we get this one shot of Zaraki Kenpachi looking absolutely fiendish, you know, smiling, as assumably this is his spiritual pressure, and he's come to bear down upon Ichigo. And so, you know, that we think about that title, right? No, like what is it? No one wins. Oh boy, I can't even remember the title, and it's not even been 10 minutes. You know, nobody wins. Okay, almost. Anyway, nobody wins. I think feeling like it perhaps refers to our protagonist, right? That they're not going to catch a win here, as both Chad and Ichigo and his company are being intercepted by a captain. We really haven't really gotten like what could be called a win for anyone here, if that's supposed to be the outcome. Certainly. And so, yeah, while Shunsui certainly seems the laid back type, Kenpachi's been itching for a fight since like the panel that he got on into the series. So we've been anticipating this battle. It's been built up. You know, we've had Kenpachi searching for Ichigo and talk of that battle. You know, since basically all of this started. So you know, this is something that's kind of been built a lot of anticipation. This is a fight that certainly Kubo will have to deliver on, right? And it does not look great for Ichigo, gotta say. I like that we get a little bit of information on that little fortification pill. Um, I like that he thinks it's a standard issue. Like maybe everybody gets the little skull pill, which is pretty morbid. But you know, his is a prank because it's just a flower pill. It's not actually anything. Um, yeah, all in all, I think this chapter really does a good bit to establish that like our characters aren't going to be having it easy moving forward. We get two very different kind of obstacles in Shunsui, who's so powerful that he's not even bothered with Chad, who we've by all rights been shown as a fucking monster and like a total powerhouse. Like Chad, it's like an unstoppable Terminator, just walking through walls and shit. But Shunsui does not seem to care at all. He's like, oh well, let's just go have some fun and games, you know, take care of this invader. And then yeah, on the flip side, you know, we have Zaraki Kenpachi, who we've known is this like bloodthirsty fellow that's probably going to murder Ichigo. And so I like that this chapter really sets up those two very different kinds of threats, but very different kinds of obstacles for our protagonists to deal with. We'll see yet how Orihime and Uryu kind of have things complicated, though. For now, this is what we're focused on. Otherwise, you know, I think solid chapter that does a good bit to introduce and establish Shunsui just off of vibes alone, and kind of I like that whole spread that he has kicked back. I think that's pretty effective. In Nano especially, you get a lot of her in juxtaposition to Shunsui's kind of foolish, I say foolish, tomfoolery maybe, and him just being very lackadaisical and flirtatious, and she's very serious and stern. Takes her job maybe a bit more seriously. Is a little more professional, let's say. Nevertheless, cool chapter. I do like these flashbacks with Chad's past, and like the way that Chad met Ichigo, and we're getting a little bit more on Chad as a character. I think that's one of the things that I have remarked that I wish that we had a little bit more from Chad, and right as I'm kind of wanting more and more from Chad, we finally get that delivered upon here in this arc. So I think Kubo really has a sense of like, I'm holding these things in balance, and just as something starts to really need attention, I'm gonna oop, there it is for you, And I think that sort of balancing act is really effective and effectively handled, at least in early Bleach. We'll see if that continues to be the case later on, because there are certainly times where, whenever I read it initially, I did not feel that way, but maybe on this reread I will. And there's other times where it's maybe been the opposite, so we'll see. Nevertheless, that's been it for this one. Getting all tongue-tied. But let us talk about spoilers. Let's talk about how this connects to the rest of the series. As far as Ichigo getting hurt and bleeding and moving on despite that's fairly straightforward. That sort of otherness that connects him and Chad. As we know, they're both Fullbringers. Maybe there's like that initial sort of sense between them, that sort of otherness. Who knows? I like that Chad looking different and his skin being different is kind of sort of brought up there by Ichigo, and that difference is one of the things that kind of ends up being significant for Chad. Yeah, whatever, Toshiro. Whenever I say Toshiro never wins, Toshiro does win fights. He just often gets wrecked first. His very, very tragic existence Toshiro has. He always has to see. It seems like he always has to lose before he can win, one way or another. Fortification Pill's a pretty good gag. Now this is, of course, I think the biggest thing here is this line, right? That I can't even imagine Chad losing, and this gets joked on so much, right? Because Chad often is the one that does not win. Chad does not get served up very many W's. And as we know, like in this arc, Chad's going to lose to Shunsui, and then he's pretty much taken out of commission for the rest of the arc. He doesn't do anything for the rest of Soul Society. And then when the next arc begins, he immediately gets bodied by, Yami, right? Almost gets killed by Yami. And so then he's out of it for the first beginning of that, for like that initial invasion with Grimmjow, I believe. He's not really around to do anything. And so then we don't see anything from him again until they go to Hueco Mundo, right? And then he's able to fight against some of the Primeron, whatever, some of the initial sort of Raincaught and Espada. But as soon as he beats Ganbane, whatever the guy's name is, Noitora shows up to just end his career. And then after that, we don't see any Chad for a long, long time. Pretty much don't get any Chad really until the Fullbringer arc. And even then, he sort of gets sidelined. Even though that arc should maybe be a time for him to shine, unfortunately. And I'll talk more about how I feel about that when we get there. But I don't think he's necessarily misused as poorly as people say that he is in Fullbringer. I certainly think that he could have been used to better effect, nevertheless. But then finally, in the final arc, Chad really doesn't get a lot to do. He participates a little bit in the whole Elburn and Kirsch fight, and then he helps out a little bit. There's a few cool moments he gets. Ultimately, I think he gets gift-balled by Askin and collapses. So, when it comes to the very final fight, he's essentially like I'm going to say reduced to Ganju's here, but he and Ganju have to hold off guys off screen, like nameless statue enemies off screen. So, the idea of like I can't imagine Chad losing isn't very front facing. That said, this line gets a lot of flack, and I don't think it deserves it because at this point, that's the whole point, right? Is that Chad and Ichigo, like Chad is somebody that Ichigo is known to never lose a fight against normal people, right? But now that they're in another world, they're on another level. The sort of threats that they're facing are beyond the scope of their understanding. And so Chad losing here is significant because Ichigo's understanding of like what is strength is being upended. That's like the whole point. It's like as much as like people like the meme on this line, like, oh yeah, Chad's supposed to be this really badass character and he's always set up to be so strong, but then he gets defeated to establish some other characters being really strong. Like, yes, there is truth to that, but by the same merit, like the point is to establish that like there is that sort of hierarchy and that there are these characters that are so much more powerful than our protagonists, and our protagonists really ultimately are like a drop in the pot for the most part, and like are bit players in a much larger sort of game. And I'm fine with that. I think Chad's arc takes on like a different kind of meaning whenever you think like, okay, what is the guy who's like always been able to help out and always been strong enough? What does he do whenever he realizes that he's falling behind? That like that's sort of like you're the champion until you enter the next like division, right? Or like the rookie who's like, oh yeah, until you got to college, now you're in like college, and it's like, oh, suddenly everybody in the sport's like way more competitive and they're whooping your ass. It's like, yeah, the victories don't come so easily anymore. What's your relationship to the sport itself? All of that. Now I'm just thinking about how good ping pong is. Ping pong's fantastic anime. Go watch ping pong. What am I even talking about Bleach for? We should be doing ping pong videos. Anyway, ping pong the animation. Check it out. Yeah, there's not a lot else that I want to say as far as spoilers go. Obviously, Shunsui. I had so much issue pronouncing Kyoraku. I was like Kyoraku, and I was like, no, that's not quite it, is it? I'm used to calling him Shunsui. Shunsui. Same thing with the now. Nanao. I think it's interesting here that like Nanao proposes like, look, I can handle him, and Shunsui's like, no, I'm gonna just go take care of it. And ultimately, I think that there's this little exchange here where he's like, oh look, if you go out and fight, you might become damaged goods, and I don't know what I'd do. Like as much as that's like a really kind of weird, pervy, flirty, unprofessional thing to say, he did let Lisa go out and fight and she became a damn visor, right? So like, I think Shunsui to a degree is maybe being his protectiveness makes a little bit more sense in light of the fact that his previous vice captain was hollow-fied whenever he didn't keep a sort of tighter watch over her. And I mean, ultimately, Shunsui's experienced quite a lot of loss in his life, so him being overly protective and really doting on Nano, I think, is product of that. That I'm not going to say it justifies his flirtatiousness or his overprotectiveness, but it certainly lends a little bit more understanding of where he's coming from. Also, obviously, the idea of it being fun and games, matching with his whole Shikai and Bankai, the idea of, his perception of battle being like, less serious, or rather that he can take the less serious things more seriously and the more serious things less seriously, that he can incorporate those sort of elements and see the world in that way and affect the world in that way, right? So the fun and games really being, well, like maybe this line is maybe more important to Kubo than it is to fans, and was Kubo kind of giving a little bit of a wink towards Shunsui's character as well as his capabilities whenever he releases his weapons. Yeah, of course. Kenpachi shows up, he's gonna wreck these fools. Who knew? Honestly, I'm trying to remember what happens to Ganju and Hanataro. I'm pretty sure that they end up going and finding Rukia and then encountering Byakuya. I'm pretty sure that's the case. So I don't remember, like, if they run away here and Saraki just lets them go or what. I'm really unsure because I know it ends up being basically a one-on-one between Ichigo and friends. Ichigo and Zaraki. So I'm interested to see kind of how that goes. But otherwise, I don't really have a lot for spoilers. I don't really have a lot of other connections that I want to draw. So if there's anything that you want to, be sure to let me know in the comments. Be sure to tag your comment as a spoiler and all of that. But otherwise, that's it for this video. I don't have a ton of things to weigh in on. I should probably not do these videos at like 3 a.m. whenever I'm, barely conscious myself. But just wanted to make sure that I get this done in time and all that and taken care of. And I feel awake enough. But I always have that moment where I'm like, man, I am fading. Maybe I shouldn't be trying to kind of talk critically about Bleach. But who knows? So if this one ended up being maybe more summary and more kind of abject sort of analysis, I apologize, folks. I hope that I can continue to at least deliver some modicum of quality. That all said, thank you so much for watching. As always, I do appreciate you giving the video a like, leaving a comment if you have anything that you want to talk about for the chapter. But otherwise, subscribing, letting friends know about the series, and another way that you can always support is via Patreon. Currently, you can see my current patrons listed on screen. That's one of the benefits, and I will always give a huge shout out and thanks to the folks that are supporting me. Thank you so much. You really do make all of this feel a little bit more worth it, eh? I'm making this for fans like you. So, thank you. Otherwise, that's it for this one, folks. This has been Carker Gold, reminding you that spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.